Hi, this is Dr. Jim Turnage in San Diego, California, and welcome to Wonderful Wednesdays. We've been here at the Heart Space for 14 years, each Wednesday night at 7 p.m. This is a very special night at the Heart Space as we continue a brand new class series based on Goldsmith's powerful book, The Infinite Way. In the next weeks, we will explore and practice Goldsmith's wisdom acquired over a lifetime of dedication and devotion to God and the spiritual path. Welcome. So welcome to week 4 of The Infinite Way here at the Heart Space, sponsored by Open at the Top International Spiritual Center, a covenanted community of the Centers for Spiritual Living. And this week we continue with a review of the classes so far, and we're going to also talk tonight about chapter 5 and 6, the soul and meditation. Our goals, as usual, review of the fundamentals of metaphysics and see the Christ in all we encounter, including ourselves. Joel Goldsmith was a Christian Science practitioner who started developing a slightly different philosophy that was derived from Christian Science, and he called that The Infinite Way, the name of this book. So he says there's a way whereby we can rid ourselves of sin, sickness, and poverty, and that's by exchanging the material sense of existence for the understanding of consciousness of life as spiritual. So the chapter 1 was about putting on immortality. In the beginning was the Word, and he wants to begin to emphasize that we don't live in a spiritual or a material world. We live in a spiritual world, a spiritual universe. And we talked about his spiritual path and our own individual spiritual paths. And I highlight synchronicity because everybody on your spiritual path, there's usually something that happens that seems miraculous or incidental or accidental. And that synchronicity event is pivotal in our development. It happens to everybody on the spiritual path.
And it's in your favor.
It's always in your favor. And that's, even when we were talking a little bit earlier, the next class series is going to be about paradox and healing through paradox. And at the time, you think the paradox has a negative implication, but in reality, it's absolutely essential to your growth. Without the paradox, without what appears to be maybe negative or difficult, is absolutely essential to steering yourself along the correct path. Now, this, of course, requires study and at some point an element of illumination and closing the cycle, sharing it with others. So what do we get out of this? Spiritual consciousness overcomes the world, both the pains and pleasures. So we're not just trying to get rid of the things we don't like and keeping only the things we like. We want to get beyond measuring our lives, our true selves, through whether it's pain or pleasure. And people say, but I have real problems. So when confronted with a human problem, we need to turn within and realize that the presence of the divine spirit is within each of us, and that's always the answer. I remember when I was getting ready, my mentor or helper, I forget what they call it, in practitioner training, who gets you ready to take your boards, your interview. And I remember Joe was telling me, he asked me all these questions, and I pretty much had them all wired. And he asked me something that stumped me because of what I didn't prepare for it. And he says, you know what the answer to this question is? And no matter what question I answer, what is the answer? And I said, I don't know. He says, prayer.
Prayer.
They will never fault you if you answer prayer, because that's your job when you're a practitioner. So if you don't know the technical answer to some theological question or some practice question or some way of approaching things, the answer is prayer. Looking for the divine presence is always within each of us. And as we all know, miracles are the normal state of affairs. This is a very important principle in the Infinite Way. And in all spiritual paths, ultimately, we see miracles not as an unusual thing, but as the normal thing. and the usual, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. We've all heard that before. And we attain our immortality.
Who first said that?
What's that? Nobody knows for sure,
Who first
Stan.
said that?
They say
Somebody
it was this French priest, Pierre Chardin.
50s or 40s. Yeah, tell us, get on.
But the problem is that he may have been somebody else before him too, but it's attributed to him.
Yeah.
So we're spiritual beings having a human experience. And to the degree that we overcome our personal sense of things, that is our immortality. That's how we achieve immortality. So chapters 3 and 4 were about spiritual illumination of the Christ within. Yeah. So our senses lead us astray because our physical senses are not, we believe those are real, but they're not real. That's not what's really going on. They are not the reality of things. So I did something kind of interesting over the last few days. Tom asked earlier how I'm going, and I said, I've had some very interesting times. So in meditation, I do lots of different things to try to change it up so the meditation doesn't get stale. So in meditation, I wanted to be able to experience the physical and not take it seriously, because it's impossible to not experience the physical in our life, but to not take it as the truth of anything. And I've been practicing that for the last few nights, particularly. Very interesting. Not allowing the senses to distract me. And you would think, well, your reality of even meditation is your senses. And it turns out it's not. There's something else going on, always. It's all about surrender. Any thought of helping or healing or correcting, changing the picture out there is going to be an impediment for our development, our spiritual development. So we have to let it go. We have to surrender that. So we begin to see more and more the ever-present reality within. And then we talked about the covenants, which is not technically in the chapters, but this idea of grace and the new covenant and the old covenant. And the new covenant is that we're saved by atonement, at one-ment, our unity. It's not something we have to earn. It's this unmerited favor, unity with God. We don't have to earn it. The old covenant, you have to sacrifice and earn and achieve and attain. And we let that go and embrace the new covenant, and we're saved by grace and atonement at one-ment. Yeah. I like this statement. This is from the book. Spiritual illumination enables us to relax and more accept the unfolding that's revealed from within us. We don't have to force things. We don't have to do things. We have to make things happen. We relax our personal efforts and rely on the divinity unfolding within each of us.
There's a saying that my grandkids taught me a number of years ago: let go, let God. That's where I first heard that, actually. It was from my grandkids.
Yeah.
I have something to say about that too. That's extremely that to me was an enlightening time for me 2 weeks ago, when I actually put this to the test, and it worked. I mean, it worked like so well. I have people I know who are on the same path, and one fellow said to me, Emmy, you cannot you cannot control your future. Let it go.
Yeah.
Let it go. And that to me was real. I mean, that I kept thinking about that. And when time came, I had to make a decision to do one thing. I said, no, I'm not going to make any decision. I'm going to just let it go. And something happened that was really wonderful. And this, it really works. It really works. You know?
Yeah, exactly. So these things, we're having a lot of synchronicity events, I think is what's happening.
Yes.
I was reading something I needed to tell. I didn't know I needed to say this tonight or to a patient earlier, but he's starting to feel old and he's starting to feel, unsuccessful, and he's been successful all his life. And he worries about every little thing that's going to happen next. And I said, he's a fundamentalist Christian. And I said, he has prepared the way before me. I said, just stop and pray. Just stop. And right before that next thing that you think you're going to be challenged by, just say, he has prepared the way before me. Which is from Mark 1, by the way, and 3 other places in the Bible. Overnight, I've been looking it up. And it was just weird. I read that, I was struck by it, and I was planning to incorporate it in my own life. And he showed up for me to practice it, because that's what he needed right then. The way is being made before us. The perfect way is being made before us. We can let go. We can relax. Allow the divinity to unfold. Yeah. So we're having a lot of synchronicity events, it sounds like. I love it. And of course, we talked about Namaste and seeing the self, divine self, the Atman, the soul within others, but also within ourselves. A bow to the divine within you. Ooh, hit the right button. Yeah, we release from personal effort, and we find the Christ within us as our present reality. Release from personal effort and find the Christ within as present reality. This is one of those Goldsmith things where I would just disappear into the reading. The next part that we read was, we jumped ahead to chapter 7 and 8, talking about prayer and metaphysical healing. So why aren't your prayers answered? And we do have an answer in James 4, verse 3. Ye ask and receive not, because ye ask amiss, that ye may consume it upon your lusts. Once again, the physical senses, the hedonistic, because we're asking for the wrong thing. That's why our prayers go unanswered. This is in Matthew 6:25. And so Jesus says, take no thought for your life, for the morrow. Take no thought about it. Don't worry about what you're going to eat or drink or what you're going to put in your body or where you're going to be. Don't think about your body at all. Is not life more than the meat, and the body than raiment? Take no thought for your life. Now, if that isn't paradoxical and counterintuitive, I don't know what is. But it's the essence. It's like Emmy was saying, don't control it. Be there. Do the work that's laid out before you. Things will unfold as they must. Take no thought for your life. Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow, and they don't toil. The fowls of the air, they don't sow, they don't reap, they don't gather into barns, and yet the Father feedeth them. Take no thought for your life. Another quote from Matthew: seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, in other words, being on the right path and doing what right action, right life, right everything, the Buddhist principles, and all things will be added unto you. This is supposed to be a mustard tree, but it's not really a mustard tree. But it's the only GIF I could find that would grow like that. So then we talked about metaphysical healing. Whenever we think about helping somebody or healing them or fixing them, correcting the material picture, we have to let that go in metaphysical healing. Because that's not the reality of you or me, and certainly not the reality of the client or patient. Healings are always in proportion to our understanding of the truth that there is perfection within you, not the physical, that's not the truth. And our healing has nothing to do with someone out there called a patient. So once again, for practitioners, one of the first things you learn is you got to treat yourself first. You have to make sure that you're in a good place, because that's where the healing occurs. When we see an aging, ailing body, withered flower, when we see the physical, we're seeing an erroneous concept of the divine idea of the world, or flowers, or trees, or people. And there's Ernest. So Ernest Holmes, who's a founder of religious science, went to the hospital to see a sick person. He went in the room, saw a sick man in the bed. He left immediately and called his own practitioner because he was of no use to a person when he saw a sick person. He had to heal himself first. Yeah, the body's governed by spiritual power. This is Christian science, straight Christian science. The body is governed harmoniously by spiritual power, and that's why Christian science, religious science, science of mind, divine science, the infinite way. That's why this quote works, unquote, because we realize the true nature of the physical, which is the governance of spiritual power. So Jesus was really good at recognizing that there was nothing in the matter, in the material. So when he goes and sees Lazarus, he doesn't go, oh, sick guy, he's already rotting, he's dead. He does not see the material. He sees only health. He sees only life. Yeah. There's so many slides today. I want to keep moving here. Yeah. Then I've taught this many times. We have to be transparent. If we want to be healers, and I assume we all are, we have to be transparent. I've been talking to a couple of indigenous healers, and this idea, this concept of transparency, in other words, I myself do nothing, is extremely important. What passes through us as witnesses is what does the healing. Yeah. Mary Baker Eddy said there's no reality of sin or disease. She also said that death was a misunderstanding. What
do you mean by that? That we misunderstood the function of death, and therefore we applied a wrong attitude towards it, or thought about it?
Because when if Jesus had walked up and seen the sick, dying Lazarus, he would not be very helpful. He certainly would not have seen the healed, healthy Lazarus. When we get deluded by the senses, then we cannot see the perfection. And so we would be immortal on this earth if we did not fall into the trap of the senses. And so Mary Baker Eddy died. She died from pneumonia. And so all of us are going to fall short. But that doesn't mean we stop trying. That doesn't mean we can't see the truth for others and ourselves.
Is it possible? I mean, in principle, could Buddha have become immortal because he saw the truth and not die of tainted meters, whatever it was?
Yeah. But
in principle, is it possible?
In principle, it's possible. But because we believe in these things, believe in the rules about birth, growth, sickness, and death, that's what happens. That's exactly what happens.
So when Jesus was on the cross and he lost faith at that moment, how was it that he was able to resurrect himself, so to speak, or be resurrected? By grace? In other words, he had lost faith. My Father, why hast thou forsaken me? So at that point, he's seen the reality of his crucifixion. So what happened next? Was it through grace?
It was already done. It was already done, because the prophecy was already done. The reason I tell the story is he lost faith on the cross, and that had no effect on his resurrection. None. That's the lesson I get
And
from
yet,
that.
yeah, but yet, when we lose faith, when we walk in and see the sick person and see them really sick, like we're shocked, maybe tubes coming out of them, things like this, for a layman like me, it isn't done for me.
Yeah.
I have to go and see my practitioner, so to speak, or get my life straight, so that I see the perfection in the situation and not the the error, you might say, of my own thinking.
Exactly. And because it's complicated, because we get this so embedded into our almost into our DNA. You might think of it as like epigenetics.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason why, our organism should die at 80 or 90 or 100, because the organism is perfectly capable of going on beyond 100. But that's not what we do with our lives. We develop beliefs and things that become the self-fulfilling prophecy.
But as others see us, when we get to be 105 and 110, they notice a definite degradation in how we appear physically, not how we appear spiritually, but how we appear physically.
Yeah.
And at least in the world of form and matter, our sense of our selfness is centered in our physicality. So, not to go with and discuss all of this, because I think you want to talk about the soul and things like that. But we see in Buddhism, it's called Joju Eiku, birth, maturation, decline, and death. It's a technical term for it. And we see that occurring around us all the time, in the trees and the people and all of this. And yet that's a mirage, but it's not a mirage in the sense of what's happening actually physically.
No, it does. It does happen physically.
Yes.
But it's an effect of our lack of belief in the truth.
So what you're asserting is that if collectively as a species, or even one of us, could, if from a Course in Miracles perspective, could actually perceive the truth 100% of the time, all of us would be immortal. Is that what you're essentially saying?
It could be, if that were what was most important about the truth of us, which is our spiritual self, not our physical self.
Yeah.
It becomes the more you see your true self, which is the spiritual self, the physical, it becomes less and less important.
Yeah.
No matter what's happening to it.
Sure.
But people, could live, who knows how long they could live, if from the very beginning we all said, you know what, there's no limit. This is an illusion. But we don't do that. We have to learn all this and learn it over and over and over and over again, because we've become conditioned to believing something that's not true.
Well,
that our life is not on this earth anyway. Our life is eternal life.
As I understand it, the Course says that because Jay reunited with the Father, all of us will eventually get there. Yeah. Because we're all of us are inseparable.
Well, in the infinite way approach, there is no place to go to be with anybody. It's already done. It's already done.
Thank you. Very good.
I think also Jehovah's Witnesses believe that as well, don't they?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
I think so. I think it's already done.
Well, they do believe, as I understand it, though I do not know that much about them, that in their belief structure, only a numerical certain number, 250,000 or something, are saved.
Yeah.
And
what I'm saying is there's no separation. It's everything that is heaven and eternity is here right now.
Yeah. I think the Lutherans believe also in a predestination type of deal too, at least some sects of Lutheranism.
I'm not even talking about predestination. I'm just talking about a misunderstanding.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Mary Baker Eddy was talking about. It's a misunderstanding. You know, this thing about immortality is the immortality of soul, not your foot or your finger or your ear.
Because your cells are constantly appearing and, you know, dying in your body constantly. Is it true that all of our cells essentially are new after every 7 years or so, that our bodies?
It depends on the tissue. Depends on the cells and the organ.
Sure.
Can I interrupt? Say something?
Go ahead.
Here?
Yeah.
My understanding is that if the body, the human body is made or built to last a very long time, not just 70, you've heard this before, 80, 90 years. It's made to last in the hundreds. Yeah. And there's evidence in the past that people did. Now, I think that the reason why we don't is because we don't believe we can. And because society says everything dies. So you must die too.
Yeah.
And ordinarily averages, you're going to die around 80, 85. You know, this is what they put out and people believe it. So, and you know, whatever you believe comes true. So you see it happening all around you and you say, well, I'm not going to, I mean, in my case, I'm the last one standing, you know, everyone passed, fairly young. So I'm saying to myself, but I don't have that same thought system. You know, I didn't think the same way they did. And I believe in regeneration as best you can, but there's still that belief system, that societal belief system still integrates your mind and this is what you start to, well, maybe the doctor's right. You know, everybody believes in doctors, right? Dr. Jim? Everybody believes what doctors say. So it's something that you have to be outside of the normal, how you say, outside of the whole, outside. You have to think for yourself, in other words.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's why there's so much we can do to live the physical life we have here and realize the spiritual more and more, despite whatever our physical body is doing, whether it's living at 200 years or whether it's living 20 years or 20 minutes, that we live a spiritual life here and not worry so much about the illusion of the senses, which is what he talks about a lot, the five senses, which is sort of funny, the five senses.
There's more.
I like the way you brought that back to the subject.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I couldn't agree more. I call it epigenetics because, we actually change the way our genetics works by our beliefs and our actions in our lives. We can predict, how long somebody's going to live if we can look at their telomeres, these little things in the cells, right?
Right.
If your telomeres are very short, you're not going to live very long, right? If they're long, you're going to live longer. Some of the things we do to our telomeres, though, is to be stressed and smoke and be polluted and do all sorts of things. There are lots of things we can control on the telomere length. But that's just secondary to our real life. Our physical life is secondary to our real life. And it's secondary in the sense that it's not real. It's only as real as we believe it is real. So it's really important that these principles that's why we have to go over this again and again. I have to do it anyway. I have to go over it again and again because my job during the day, my day job, I'm getting sucked into the belief system, and it's interesting belief system. So today, that guy, those things I was worried about, telling him I prepare the way forward for you, is that he was believing that he was old and worn out. And that's not a useful belief to have. That's not helpful. Okay. All curing ultimately ends in physical death. So there's curing and there's healing. Metaphysical healing's inevitable outcome is eternal life. So this is right on point. Once again, the more we believe in the physical limitations, there will be a limitation. And all curing, taking medicine and doing all that kind of stuff. no matter what we do is ultimately going to end in death. But our metaphysical healing recognizes our eternal life. That's why when we do metaphysical work, because we're looking to recognize our healed self, which is eternal.
Aren't we really talking about is change? Because I'm thinking here about a star, and we can observe a star's life, and we can observe its death, and in a sense that it changes its form. The matter changes into energy, and the energy comes out in different ways, and it reforms again, and we have a new star, or we have planets, and this sort of thing. And isn't that a lot like our own lives? That in a sense our cells are replicating and we're changing physically, and of course, like going to a class like this, we are in the process of changing spiritually too, hopefully climbing a mountain and getting closer to God. But it seems to me this is a lot about change itself, and not fighting change, but flowing with it.
Yeah, and the main thing is not accepting the senses and reasoning mind. Let it be silent, and let our thinking mind and adopt a listening attitude. So I was mentioning earlier, when I've been thinking about these physical senses a lot, and not taking them so seriously. They're
So
just
what do we think when we hear or see a star go supernova? That is, the extension of our senses perceive this in our telescopes and our cameras, and we conclude that change has taken place in that star.
Yeah.
So are we not to? Yeah, I mean, what's the proper attitude in that observation?
I used to like comic books too, and it's interesting, but it's so separated from the central concerns that I have. I don't read comic books anymore. And what happens to a supernova, I'm much more interested in what happens internally in my soul.
Well, of course, but this is a metaphor. I mean, we're seeing in our environment through the extension of our senses, but we're still locked in. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more about the fundamental untruths that our senses convey to us.
Yeah.
But we say a star is composed of X and X and X and X materials, and then we see it go through a change or more that is in its own way similar to the changes we see going in ourselves in the Jojo Eiku, the birth, maturation, decline, and death, and then rebirth again. And
once again, though, it's another illusion. And no matter how we refine the way we look at our senses, the way we use our senses, electron microscopes or advanced ways of looking at the universe, we're still making the error of getting locked into our senses.
So basically you're saying pay no attention to that star or the changes that are occurring in our life, and what's really going on is the eternity of our consciousness with the divine conscious field, and the eternity of our spiritual part of our existence. Is that what you're saying?
You got it. And we only have 33 slides to go.
Okay. Good.
You got it exactly. It's all covered in the next set of slides.
Okay.
That's exactly it.
That's
exactly it.
Let you.
That's exactly it. So once again, what we need to know will be revealed. When and how we need to know it will be revealed. What we need to do will be revealed. That doesn't mean, just sit back and do nothing. That means what you need to know will be revealed. And what you need to do or act, how you need to act will be revealed. And when you find that, do that. And maybe it's becoming an astrophysicist, and finding out what's happening with all those supernovas. I don't know. Something I never wanted to do. Once again, be willing, be receptive, and be still.
I love that. Be still and know that I am God.
Yeah. Let the personal go, and let God come in. Let that voice come to you in a way that is not the physical voice. There's not of the five senses. that the voice that is not heard, that the touch that is not felt, but yet we know it. The thought that is not formulated is there. And I've, of course, told this story many times about the young woman who believed she was a healer with a fever. And I'll leave a slide in here in case we need it someday. And that her error there was believing that she was the healer of anything. And the same thing with us. You know, even when we do surgery on people, or we give people medications or whatever kind of a treatment, I think that I'm supposed to know the mechanism of action of all those things. And I usually do. But that's not how it actually works. Many years later, often we find out the belief we had about how something worked was absolutely wrong. And yet, people got better, even though we were using a worthless treatment. Or maybe it didn't operate the way we thought it did, and the mechanism was not the way we thought it was. Because all along, the healing and even the curing were occurring because that's what was supposed to happen.
Yeah, we touched on this a little bit when you brought up the issue of placebo effect in an earlier class.
Yep. So that's the review of all the classes so far.
That's just a review. Wow. Okay.
Yep.
Better shut up.
We're talking about soul and meditation. So the etymology of the word soul actually comes from a Proto-Germanic word that probably has to do with spirits coming from water, like a lake or a sea, and then returning to the lake or sea. So Goldsmith says the soul is a part of the man which is little known and only seldom realized, the soul, a reality of being. All human discords are products of material sense. I mean, he's in many places in the infinite way. He talks once again, this is how we lead ourselves astray, through the physical senses. You can get temporary relief of things, of the inharmonies of daily existence. But once again, destruction of error comes only through the faculties of the soul. Once again, the spiritual is the source of healing. Yeah. These soul powers come forth within us and reach every avenue of our daily life. These soul powers, the soul self is operating all the time. We may ignore it. We may try to stuff it down. We may deny it, but it's always in operation in every aspect of our life. He says, clothing every event in our experience with love, understanding, and success. We may reject love, understanding, and success, but it's always present. This soul self, this soul power is always present. Yeah. So this is the land of the butts. But I'm too busy. So many answer, I love Goldsmith. He goes, many answer that they have great human duties which occupy all their time. Others require so much time for sense pleasures, pastimes, and recreation. Still others are immersed in accomplishing and acquiring. Here he is right there. This man will tell me, I have no time for meditation. I have no time for prayer. I have no time to be still and know that I am God. He has no time for this. I'm never too busy. No matter what we say, I'm never too busy. We're beginning to realize that freedom from fear, insecurity, want, and ill health is not to be found in the material realm. The soul conscious person lives an inner life of peace, joy, and dominion, and an outer life in complete harmony with themselves and with all the world of men, animals, and things. So if you're too busy, I believe there are still 24 hours in a day for each one of us. And there will be a time that you can meditate or pray or both. He points out here too, there's something very important, that these things that we think we want to accomplish are not for selfish ends. the resident in our soul, cannot be used for selfish purposes. Even if you felt some power within, you were able to manipulate other people in other situations to get and gain and acquire. That's not your highest good. Your highest good is in service. Your highest good is in help and not being selfish. All the good necessary for our welfare will be supplied to us in greater abundance than we can accept. Come more in the consciousness of desiring only to fulfill our destiny on earth. So there's an unlimited supply. There's always an unlimited supply. Yeah. All that I have is yours. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. All that I have is thine. As we learn to be in a state of receptivity, we will find ourselves filled with soul power, soul consciousness, soul resources, and the company of soul-filled men and women. I think that's a pretty good plan for life. Know the power within us, which is spirit. Know that consciousness, which is the one mind. Know that we have infinite resources available. All that I have is yours. And we become surrounded by others pursuing the same. The mind that was in the Christ Jesus is your mind. Become receptive to the divine wisdom within you. You can do this. But why do we resist and persist?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, why do we do that? We believe that we believe what we see. And so that is an error. Just because something appears to be happening out there doesn't mean it's happening.
What is happening?
An illusion. That's that outside stuff that's going on out there. That's
why.
Why do we do that?
Where does illusion come from? I, for example, I see an auto accident occur.
Yeah.
Now, is that my illusion, or is that their illusion that we're involved in the auto accident, or is that all of our illusions?
You'll never know. You never know their consciousness. You'll never know another person's consciousness.
But it happened to them, and in my experience is witnessing it, not having it happen to me.
Yeah, let's take a layer. Let's take a layer away from it. What if you saw an auto accident? How would you interpret that? You would have an interpretation of what happened, right?
Sure.
Yeah. You might go, wow, what an opportunity to serve.
Yeah.
And run over there. You might stand back and go, what a bunch of idiots. They ran red lights.
You might feel gratitude that just missed happening to you.
Yeah. There's so many things. You may get an opportunity to see death. You may have an opportunity to see life. You may not even see the accident. And somebody goes, didn't you see that big accident? And you go, what accident? So we have some say over our consciousness. But what we see in the physical is always an error. The stories we tell about our lives are always wrong. They're always inaccurate. That's the disagreement I have with my father about telling stories.
Mm-hmm.
Because I said, telling your story takes you into the past. They're never accurate, and it causes existential suffering. And he goes, no, you're wrong. You must learn your stories and use your stories to help others. So I've taken the middle path.
Well, you could both be right. It's just how seriously you take the story. The story is illustrative of something, and that can be helpful.
But remember, too, every story that I tell will always be wrong.
Well, yeah, but the effect that you're aiming for for the reason of telling it might end up being right. A cautionary tale.
It'll be a story.
A learning experience for someone else.
Yeah. Also remember too, Stan, if I'm telling a story, I'm not living in the moment.
You're not, but I'm living in the moment of that story when I'm listening to it.
Yeah.
And I'm learning something, hopefully.
Yeah. So that's why I've taken the middle way, which is tell the stories, knowing it's going to cause me suffering. And so that is an impetus to me just to do more prayer and meditation.
So being a good storyteller for a good purpose is a sacrifice. You're sacrificing your own present moment in resurrecting the past or the future or whatever the story is about, for the benefit of others who are in the present as that story is unrolling or being presented. Would that
But they
be
might
correct?
also decide too, you know what? I'm not going to suffer anymore. I'm going to stop telling stories. That's, when I do therapy, a lot of the therapy has to do with people telling stories
Mm-hmm.
and challenging the stories. Not me challenging the stories, but have them challenge the story.
Mm-hmm.
Is this story true? When you tell the story to yourself, do you feel better or do you feel worse? Or do you feel the
Sure.
same? And we start challenging the stories and realize, I did brief therapy with a young woman today, and she has not had cognitive therapy before. And she continually tells stories to herself. And I said, when you tell the story to yourself, do you feel better or worse? She goes, worse. Then I go, isn't it interesting that you keep telling yourself that story? But it's what happened. And I said, okay, I won't challenge that because I don't know that I wasn't there. I don't know the exact, my interpretation. But is this helping you or harming you? Says it's not helping. And I said, well, I wonder why you do that. And we do that because we are addicted to our sensory life. We're addicted to our senses and our stories. And we can learn another way. We can learn a different way. We can go, you know what? I know I'm meditating today, this morning, and my side hurts and my foot hurts. And not, or now I can't meditate because my foot hurts. No, and I'm going to continue to look at the paradox of my foot hurting and this sense of all is well. Even though there's an appearance of my foot hurting, that my senses are telling me, they're reporting to me. I can learn to go, that's not relevant. That is nothing. I can learn to say that is nothing. What is real is the other direct experience. Yeah.
That recalls the Maharishi or whatever that was dying of liver cancer, or pancreatic cancer, whatever it was, and he was asked, "Are you in pain?" He goes, "Well, I'm in pain, but I'm not suffering."
He says his followers said, "Maharishi, you must be suffering a great deal." He says, I don't suffer at all, but I'm in great pain. And that's that letting go of the illusion of the senses, letting go of the illusion of the senses and embracing the truth. Spiritual consciousness is the awareness of the individual as God being as having only the mind of God and the body of spirit. Yeah. We know that unillumined thought beholds the universe as material. When we become illumined, when we become enlightened, our soul sense sees and understands the universe as spiritual. We begin to see the truth. We see it without eyes. We see it without ears. We see it without speech. We see it without sensory senses and nerves. This is an important principle. I put this in here because when we start doing this work, the more we do this work and hold this consciousness, this soul-centered consciousness, it radiates out from us. This recalls what we talked about at Heart Math. When you hold that consciousness, it starts extending beyond your physical body in ever-widening circles until it embraces all of humanity. That's another reason to develop our soul powers. It's a very practical thing. If we want to change those around us and change the universe, the more work we do like this helps the universe. Yeah. So this leads into the chapter of meditation. What does he say? The door to the realm of the soul and inspiration is meditation. We sit quietly. He says 3 times a day. But I usually say twice a day, plus as many times as you can find the opportunity, and sit quietly with a listening ear, with that listening posture, that listening ability, listening for that still small voice. And we acquire the habit of meditation through the skill and the technique of meditation. Then inspiration possesses us, and we begin to experience the haven of the soul. Centrally important to all spiritual path. In the spiritual tongue, meditation is prayer. The contemplation of God and God activities, the nature of God and the nature of the world that God has created. So when we go into prayer, we go into meditation, I advocate that we don't ask for anything. We don't expect anything. We don't ask to be changed. We don't ask that 6 weeks from now when we measure our anxiety level, it'll be lower. That we simply go there and be in the presence of God and contemplate God's presence and God's action in our lives and in the world. Yeah. Take their time consecrated to thinking about God and God's universe. Here are the buts of meditation. So my saying is, lower your expectations and raise your sights. What is the correct amount of expectation in meditation? 0. None. You go into meditation with 0 expectation, which helps you really elevate your practice. So the statement is to people say, I don't have time. So, okay, do less. Do less. I don't have time for 20 minutes. I don't have time for 5 minutes. Do less. There are very few people on the earth right now that don't have 5 minutes twice a day to sit quietly in any place. You don't need a mat. You don't need incense. You don't need a gong. You don't need any special instruction other than sit quietly and allow your breathing to occur and listen with that still mind and allow things to come. They say, but my mind is filled with thoughts. What do? You breathe, you focus on your thumbs or a rock or a mantra and let the thoughts come and go. I usually have people, once they commit to 5 minutes twice a day, I have them come back in about 2 weeks. And the question I have is, what did you discover? What did you discover? And whatever it is, that's what you address. Well, my knees hurt. Okay, why are they hurting? Well, aren't you supposed to sit with your legs crossed? I didn't say anything about. I didn't say anything about crossing your legs. Oh, you must have seen that like on a picture, right? Okay. Well, then don't cross your legs. The first rule is lower your expectations. Do less. Don't bend your knees. Don't cross your legs. Well, I was lying down, and after about 10 minutes, I fell asleep. Okay. What happened before you fell asleep? Well, isn't that I failed? I failed my meditation. I fell asleep. That's not a rule. That's not a rule. It's sitting quietly with no expectations, initially twice a day. Do less if it seems too hard. Allow your thoughts to come and go. Allow your breath to come and go. And begin to notice what you notice. And we'll call that meditation. And once you do that more and more and more, who knows, you might want to do it forever. You might want to do it every day. You might want to do it every time that you have a thought during the day. There might be a concern or a question. But it does require effort in the sense that you're going to try to sit quietly for 5 minutes twice a day. In meditation, we often notice that we are inseparable from everything else. It may not happen in the beginning because you may be focused on your knees hurting or your back or your thoughts coming and going. You're trying to figure out if you're going to get to the bank on time or not. But after a while of doing this, you begin to realize that there is no difference between you and the chair. There's no difference between you and the air. There is no separation between any part of you and every part of the universe. That the wave is only a different way of looking at the ocean. It's the same. The ocean is the same thing as the wave. The wave is the same thing as the ocean.
Looks like a hologram.
Yeah, good GIF. Your oneness with the divine consciousness constitutes your oneness with every idea of consciousness. So all of the consciousness is available at every point in time. That is holographic. And so I put this slide in here because whenever you leave one place to go to another place, you may want to say a prayer or a meditation and pause for a few seconds and realize that the presence has gone before you to prepare the way, which is a paraphrase of Mark 1, verse 2. I go before you.
What if, this is just a thought here, but what if that we don't go anywhere, in that if science informs us at the beginning of the Big Bang, everything was, and the Bible talks about the world with the universe forming mass, and then we have the expansion of the universe. Well, everything was connected together at one time. And what we understand about entanglement, then we're still connected everywhere, everything. And so going somewhere is almost like we don't need to get on a rocket ship and go somewhere. We're already there. We just don't realize it.
Because we're connected with every single thing. Every manifestation we're connected with.
Exactly.
And those things that are not manifest. All the things that are coming to you that you haven't seen yet, they're already there. You just haven't seen them yet.
Yeah.
They will be manifest at the right time.
And so when scripture talks about all that I have is yours, well, it is, because every part of the universe is in you and every part of you is in the universe. The fallacy, as they used to say in Buddhism, was that everyone is a Buddha, but the Buddhas are the ones that realize it. Everyone else doesn't realize that. They haven't attained that level of understanding yet, or vision.
I think that the Buddhas are around us all the time, including us.
Sure.
I had a patient for a long time, and he was definitely not into any of this stuff we talk about. And he was suffering a lot from mental problems and other things. And he came back one time, and I'd been encouraging him to do meditation. And he came back for a visit, and he told me, he says, I can't do that meditation, so I just go for a walk. And he, on his own, discovered walking meditation.
Yeah.
And what he described to me was a very profound meditative experience. So there was another Buddha. There was another Buddha. He taught me something. When all mankind comes to its true identity, there will be no wars, no competition, no strife. In this way, all men will ultimately be brought into the kingdom of heaven, which is also what Carl Jung said. So, any questions about the first 4 weeks? Cool.
I would just say that this is so synchronous. It is synchronicity personified in my life, because exactly what we're talking about is the kind of things I've been thinking about and experiencing and working through and meditating on, and all of this that we're talking about right now. Yeah. Oh, it's amazing. The timing is really, and maybe it isn't synchronicity. Maybe it's because we're all just connected. It appears like it's something miraculous or pseudoscience or paranormal, but actually it's very normal.
Yeah, you understand, it's always there.
Yeah,
and it manifests at just the right time in just the right way.
sure.
And because we're actually doing the work, it's more likely to manifest itself at this time.
I think
Yeah.
there's certain parts of this book and certain passages that you can really stretch out and really get into and talk for a longer time than we've spent on it. I think we just zip right through it. And
Yeah.
I think sometimes we have to go back and just go back and say and think about what that means to you, what that passage actually means. Yeah, that's that's what I think. Mhm.
Yeah, I
There's
agree
a
with
lot
you.
of good stuff here, a lot of good stuff here that you can really take your time and say, well, what does he really mean? Or what does it mean to me?
Hmm.
Exactly.
You can learn a
Exactly.
lot from it.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, I always liked this book. I liked it from the very beginning. And
Yeah,
I said,
Yeah.
it's really amazing. Some of the passages there you can really get into. You can just spend time with it, and it's really informative.
and it's interesting because this is the first book, right?
This
And
is his first book?
Yes, it is. It's the essence of his philosophy.
I didn't know that. I'm
Yeah.
hardly a Goldsmith scholar, but of the Goldsmith I've read, this is by far my favorite.
Yeah, this is the beginning. This is the beginning, and there are 40-something books.
Wow.
Oh, I read some of his books, but not 47.
I think I've got 20-something on the shelf in here somewhere.
Wow.
I guess it's just the same class, just a different day.
Exactly.
Yeah, he just repeats everything he said before.
That's a joke.
Yeah, it's true. I mean,
That's just a joke.
so many of the things are repeated, but things like I said it earlier. It's things will show up at the right time in the right way, and so by repeating it in different ways, it's already there, and we'll be ready for it at the right time, and
Right.
then we'll take it in and then act on it.
Yeah, the thing is that this kind of work, this kind of philosophy, you don't learn in a minute. I mean, really, you really have to come back to it repeatedly and think about what was said, what was going on in your mind at the time, what was going on in your life when this happened.
Yeah,
It's like it has a message for you in every part of your life and all throughout your life.
exactly. And
Same
it becomes
like the
challenging.
miracles books.
Yeah, it's like, am I willing to let go of my suffering?
Hmm.
Am I willing to let go of that?
I've learned a lot. From this book and from the miracles books and just being in this class, I've learned so much over this past couple of years. Yeah, I'm amazed. I wouldn't think that way in the past. I mean, you had to get involved with everybody's life, get to know them, tell them what to do. You know, this is what you do. And now I just stand back and say, oh, this is interesting.
Yeah. Well, obviously, I came from this from a very religious point of view originally when I was a kid. But then, thank goodness, lots of interesting stuff happened. And I realized that I had to go deeper and deeper and deeper into this. And we could do this class 10 times.
Yes.
And it would be something would be different each time.
And you have.
And for me, anyway, the question always is, are you ready to quit suffering? Are you ready to let go of this? How much are you really willing to let go this time?
Yeah.
How
many
much?
times you have to come back into physical form to learn it?
Yeah. Are you ready to surrender? How much are you ready to surrender? And it's not a punishment if you don't. It just doesn't happen then. It's like a Course in Miracles. It's a required course. Only the timing is optional.
Yeah, optional.
Yeah, you can read that book over and over again, and you can swear, I didn't read this before. This is not, I don't remember reading this before, but it's there. You just, at the time when you read it, it meant nothing to you. So you skipped along to the next paragraph or whatever. But yeah, you can read that over and over again and always find something new.
Exactly.
And meaningful.
It's evocative, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So,
are we done with this book then?
no.
Oh, okay.
Well, one more week.
Okay.
So your soul work or life work this week would be to write down experiences of your soul self, not your physical self, not your physical life.
Explain.
you'll be going along and some synchronistic thing will occur.
Okay.
You'll be going along and you'll feel inspired. Like today, I knew exactly what to say to this guy. And it wasn't because I knew what he was going to ask about, because it was something, his presenting complaint was something completely different than what I shared with him. And I just happened to be ready for it because I'd just been reading it.
Right.
That to me is a soul self.
Yeah.
And the more I give you this expectation that you'll find three, you won't just find three, you'll find many.
Yeah.
I have another fellow I do therapy with, and we're probably going to finish up this time. And I asked him to find, because I was working with him with heart math. And I asked him to recall 3 times in his life where he felt love, appreciation, gratitude, and unconditional love, so that he'd be able to put those things into his heart. And when he came back, he said, that was really hard. And I said, oh, wow. Did you come up with 3? He says, I have so many. I have so many. And that's not how he presented it.
It was hard for him to get it out.
It was hard for him just to limit it.
Wow.
The list was so long. He said, I have so many.
But he was blind to it until you asked him to. Until you asked him to do that. And it was hard at first. It's almost like gratitude. He wasn't aware of what was going on in his life until he made an effort to look. And then, wow.
Right. When hypnosis, we would call this a pre-hypnotic suggestion. In other words, we're going to assume that he is going to come up with something, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, I was blown away. Because his life has been a life of lack and limitation in so many ways, particularly emotionally and psychologically. And he seemed bereft of joy in things in life. And his big complaint was, I had a hard time because there were so many. He said, the more I thought about it, there were so many things that I'm grateful for that brings joy to my heart when I think about them. Hard to list them all. And that expectation that we are already healed was what I was encouraging to do this thing. So I mentioned 3 things. When I mention 3 things, there are always more than 3 things.
Mm-hmm.
When you say there's only this way, there's always not just always this way. There's this way and that way. When you say there's only this way and that way, there's always this way, that way, and the middle way. When you say there's this way, that way, and the middle way, there are 10 ways. They're always an unlimited number. But by making it focusing on 3, I'm hoping that you'll challenge yourself and find the experience of soul self as a normal part of your life. And remember that if you are meditating, I encourage you to do it at least twice a day, expecting nothing, asking for nothing, expecting nothing in return for the meditation. And allow your consciousness of your true self to radiate outward. As you start feeling that meditative experience, allow this to radiate from your core. Let it go to your skin and beyond your skin, beyond your body, beyond your life, to the entire world and out through the entire universe. It just so happens.
Boy, that sure sounds.
So it just so happens that heart math.
Sure sounds like heart lock.
It is. Heart math is promoting this right
math.
now. They just happen to be promoting this right now, and I did this slide, 2 weeks ago.
So, but Dr. Jim, how can we do the meditation without expectation? Because of course, when you are going to do meditation, your intention is to get some peace to your mind. So that's also an expectation. You are expecting some peace in your mind or in your heart or your body.
I would give up on that idea. I would give up on it. Seriously, I would just let it go and say, I don't know anything about this meditation thing. All I know is I'm sitting here quietly with this listening mind, this listening heart. I'm sitting here quietly breathing.
Or maybe at that time, if we don't want any expectation, so just we have to think like, oh, my body is lifeless and I'm just lying down in the grave, something like that.
I wouldn't even go there. I think actually when I'm having a hard time, and because I get my mind going a lot, I do 20 breaths, counting backwards from 20, or counting from 1 to 20. I do 20 breaths with 5 to 6 seconds in, pause, 5 to 6 seconds out. And I don't really think about anything else except that. And eventually, once I get somewhere in the 20, if I get to 20, I get to a place where I'm not really paying attention to much of anything.
You're neutral, huh?
It's pretty neutral. And then if something starts coming up, I breathe some more. Because I can always do that later. I can always think about that later. I can always listen to the fan making a lot of noise later. I can always wonder if I'm going to get all the slides done before the class tonight later. I can always, wonder if my tummy's going to feel better later. And just have the meditation only for itself without expectation, asking for nothing. In retrospect, I've found anyway over the years that I've received so much through meditation and prayer. I've received so much. But it's in retrospect.
Sometimes when you quiet your mind like that, you're able to see actually what you really want, or all that's there in front of you that you're oblivious to. I know that it's a practice that I do for myself to become aware of the gratitude in my heart, so that when things aren't going maybe the way that I want them to go, and I'm trying to push too much, and I'm on that rat thing, the hamster's wheel or whatever, that by just silencing my thoughts and listening to, after I get to that neutral place, that I find a wave of gratitude coming over me for real blessings that I seem to be blind to when I'm caught in the monkey mind, going around and around and trying to do this or do that or make this or that happen.
Yeah. So Stan, I think over time, as you recognize that those things, that even those things you can let go of.
Well, I know that I developed an appreciation for attachment and the lack of, or the feeling of being attached with my kitty here, that I really missed her, and I really grateful that she came back and that she's safe and healthy. But it also illuminated that to me, that we have an attachment that is a two-edged sword, that when she wasn't here, I hurt.
Yeah.
So, and this isn't
Buddha got it right.
You did, but I own the attachment. I love her, and and she's back, and I will enjoy our fellowship and our relationship because she's here now.
Well, remember too the life of the Dalai Lama. Happy birthday, Dalai Lama, by the way, 86th birthday.
Wow.
Yeah. He and his brother went to the monastery at the same time when he was 4.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, many years later, his brother died, and the Dalai Lama experienced intense grief.
Mm-hmm.
But he's also a Buddhist monk. He knows what to do. He knows to pray and meditate. And not, deny the feelings. They are the feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And so the experience of these things is not a defeat.
Yeah.
But
I remember
give them only their due. But remember that the true thing about us is that unlimited soul self that is connected with the all.
Yeah.
That is the all.
There's a narrative or story. Fritz Perls, who's someone that I had a lot of appreciation and admiration for. He was saying goodbye to Carl Jung at the airport, and they understood that this would probably be the last time they ever see each other alive. And Jung told Pearls that their lives were always connected, and time, space, and distance could never separate that relationship.
Yeah.
That it was an eternal relationship. And Pearls talks about this in his.
Yeah. So this week, your soul work, your life work is about connecting with the soul self at every opportunity.
Yeah.
And then radiating, when you're in meditation, radiating that outward from you so that you benefit everything within you and without you, everywhere. So next week, we're going to talk about supply and then finish up the book. I propose that the next class series be about healing through paradox, which is a class that I wrote about 6 years ago. And the intention was to do a book about it, which never happened, which was prompted for me by a book that was given to me by a priest when I was in the Navy. And the priest would show up, everybody would show up at New Orleans to do their 2-week reserve drill.
Mm-hmm.
And this priest showed up, and we didn't need a priest. All of our spiritual stuff was planned way, way, way ahead of time. And so he's there, he really doesn't have anything to do. And so I said, well, this is great. He said, well, you can counsel me. And he said, are you Catholic? And I go, no. But you showed up at the perfect time, because I'm having concerns about my life and the meaning of my life. And we had some very interesting conversations, and he gave me a book called Living with Contradiction. And several things have happened in my life since then that these contradictions are the anvil. They're the opportunity to really get that edge sharpened, to find that tool and make it effective through contradiction, through paradox.
Living through contradictions.
Yeah, and so it's a nice little book.
Was he a Jesuit?
No, he was not. I think he was Carmelite, maybe.
Okay.
It's been a very long time. I can't find the original book he gave me, which had an inscription in it. So isn't it, he just showed up at the wrong time, at the wrong place, and prompted this search for me about what does it mean that these things happen that are disturbing. Well, they're perfect. They're absolutely perfect. So I would propose that we do that. The alternative for that, if that doesn't strike your fancy, is doing the class on Goldsmith's interpretation of the scripture, the Christian scripture, which is an interesting little book. And I don't think we've done that in 10 years, probably. It's been a very long, I probably can't even find the slide set for that. But I prefer to do the paradox thing. I think it's more evocative, as we say.
It might be more synchronous too.
I think it might be nice to have a little break from Goldsmith.
Yeah, because even the interpretation of scripture thing, which is more nuts and bolts, is not that nuts and bolts. So let's do paradox. I'll plan on that. I'll get working on that.
Okay.
That's this week. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Being with us here at Open the Top International Spiritual Center, a covenanted community of the Centers for Spiritual Living. And next week, more Infinite Way. Thanks for joining us again for Wonderful Wednesdays, sponsored by Open at the Top International Spiritual Center, a covenanted community of the Centers for Spiritual Living. We've been here at the Heart Space every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. for the past 14 years. Please join us again next week as we continue our new class series based on The Infinite Way, a fantastic book and philosophy of Joel Goldsmith. If you'd like to contact me, please email me at drjim@drjimturnage.com. That's drjim, drjim, at drjimturnage.com. Peace and blessings to you all, and have a wonderful week.